You were not born into power. You were born into noise, endless advice, hollow encouragement, and moral slogans that promised freedom if you only worked hard enough. But every year, the harder you worked, the more invisible you became. Your effort became a currency that enriched everyone but you. You gave your time, your loyalty, your focus, and in return, you received just enough to keep believing. That belief was the leash. That leash was the system. You were never poor because you lacked intelligence. You were poor because you mistook motion for strategy, virtue for leverage, obedience for security. You were taught that the path to wealth was narrow but fair, that patience was rewarded and honesty protected you. Those who taught you this weren't lying out of malice. They were repeating what kept them safe. The machine of society doesn't need your rebellion. It needs your faith in rules written to preserve someone else's comfort. Look closely. The world doesn't reward effort. It rewards position, the place you occupy in the architecture of perception. The same idea, the same skill, the same product, when presented from a throne, commands worship. When presented from the crowd, is ignored. Machiavelli saw this 5 centuries ago in the courts of princes. Power was never about merit. It was about proximity, to influence, to narrative, to fear. The lesson has not changed, only the costumes. Today, the throne is attention, the court is the marketplace, and fortune smiles not on the diligent, but on the decisive. Hard work builds dependence. Strategy builds direction. You've been told to be useful. Machiavelli would tell you to be necessary, because the useful can be replaced. The necessary cannot. The worker dies in anonymity. The strategist survives in memory. Every empire, every dynasty, every billionaire that rose from dust followed this unspoken rule. They stopped trading time for validation and started building systems that converted other people's energy into their permanence. Think of the modern world as a theater of perception. Money does not flow to value. It flows to visibility. The one who shapes belief shapes demand. You can invent nothing yet control everything if you master how people interpret what they see. Machiavelli advised his prince to appear virtuous, not to be virtuous. To the masses, appearance is truth. In business, politics, and personal life, the principle remains. Those who define the narrative of worth become the custodians of wealth itself. But to reach that clarity, you must pass through a kind of death. The death of the good worker inside you, the obedient student, the moral debtor who waits for permission. Society conditions you to measure progress in exhaustion. You feel moral when you suffer for others, when you sacrifice comfort for approval. The rich do not share that religion. They see guilt as a chain. They replace apology with timing. They understand that morality is a performance staged by the powerful to keep the weak predictable. This doesn't mean you must be cruel. It means you must be lucid. Power requires a surgical detachment from illusions that comfort others. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince, he wasn't describing cruelty. He was describing the physics of control. Those who see the world as it is can move through it without being consumed by it. The first law of wealth, therefore, is not accumulation but observation. To observe without judgment is to detect patterns hidden beneath emotion. Where money truly moves, who truly decides, what everyone else refuses to see. Pause for a moment. Every advertisement, every financial promise, every guru telling you to believe in yourself, they're not selling empowerment. They're selling predictability. They want you inspired enough to produce, but blind enough to obey. Machiavelli would smile at this. He knew that the illusion of hope is the most efficient method of control. When people believe they are free while serving someone else's vision, they become the perfect resource. Self-motivated slaves disguised as dreamers. You were told to play fair. Fairness, however, is the vocabulary of those who cannot enforce power. The rich speak another language, leverage. Leverage bends fairness until it fits their ambition. It turns morality into marketing and humility into a costume. The man who knows leverage no longer competes, he dictates the terms of competition. That's why you must stop chasing equality and start studying asymmetry, where a single move can replace 1,000 efforts. In the age of digital empires, leverage wears new faces. Algorithms, audiences, automation, access. The modern prince doesn't raise armies. He builds ecosystems that make others fight for his benefit. He doesn't ask for loyalty. He designs dependence. Every corporation, influencer, and magnate today follows the same blueprint Machiavelli wrote for Florence. Control perception, reward obedience, punish unpredictability. The few who understand this live like sovereigns. The rest become their content. You may think, but I'm not powerful. I have no capital, no network, no influence. That's the illusion. The starting point of every Machiavellian transformation is nothing, precisely because nothing cannot be threatened. You have no image to defend, no hierarchy to obey. Poverty of circumstance can become richness of perspective if you learn to watch how others move. The powerful are loud because they fear irrelevance. The strategist is silent because he knows silence multiplies value. To rise from nothing, you must learn to weaponize invisibility. Move quietly while others broadcast their intentions. Learn how attention works. What triggers curiosity? What holds it? What converts it into trust? The modern marketplace doesn't reward the best. It rewards the most controlled storyteller. If you can build a myth around your motion, you can transform perception into income, curiosity into currency, mystery into magnetism. Think about this. In every field, the loudest are rarely the richest. True wealth hides behind walls of calm. The king does not shout in the streets. He moves pawns without leaving his chair. You too must become that presence. Unhurried, unreadable, inevitable. Appear less, deliver more. Let scarcity amplify your value. Machiavelli warned that fortune favors the bold, but not the reckless. Boldness is not noise, it's precision. The poor act on emotion, the powerful act on calculation. The poor rush to prove themselves, the powerful wait until the timing magnifies their smallest gesture. Wealth is not born from risk, but from rhythm. The rhythm of patience guided by foresight. Every loss you've ever suffered came not from ignorance but from haste. You gave before observing. You trusted before testing. You exposed your intention before securing your defense. Machiavelli wrote that princes fall not from weakness, but from visibility. To protect what you build, you must learn to disappear behind layers of narrative. Let others attack illusions while you guard the structure beneath. The new currency of power is psychological distance, the ability to remain emotionally neutral while everyone else panics. Markets collapse, trends fade, people betray, and yet the strategist stays composed. This calm is not coldness, it's design. Emotion is expensive. Every burst of anger, every anxious decision, every need for validation. These are hidden taxes that drain your fortune before you even earn it. The rich don't pay those taxes because they've learned to act from clarity, not craving. You must unlearn the need to prove your worth. Proving invites judgment. Judgment invites control. Machiavelli would tell you, never explain, never defend, never reveal the limits of your ambition. The moment others can measure you, they can manipulate you. The greatest advantage of those who rise from nothing is unpredictability. No one knows what you will do next. Let that uncertainty become your fortress. Observe the psychology of those who make it. They build symbols, not systems. They craft identities that others admire, envy, or fear. And yet, behind every image is a mechanism, a structure that converts admiration into leverage. You must think like an architect of emotion. Ask yourself, what do people crave that they cannot name? Then design a mirror that reflects it back to them. That mirror is wealth. Money, in the Machiavellian sense, is crystallized influence. It's not numbers in an account but evidence of control, proof that others move according to your intent. That's why true wealth feels effortless. It's the byproduct of alignment between perception and power. The poor chase money as if it were an object. The rich cultivate it as an atmosphere. But understand this, the path from nothing is not linear. You will lose friends who worship comfort. You will offend those who believe morality guarantees reward. You will outgrow every environment that praises humility but punishes audacity. Machiavelli's students were not the loved ones. They were the survivors. To become rich like never before is not just to accumulate, it is to detach, to strip away the illusions that make others harmless. Ask yourself, who profits from your hesitation? Who gains when you doubt your capacity? Who taught you that patience was noble? Every delay you justify with morality is a delay someone else converts into dominance. The world isn't waiting for your virtue. It's moving on your indecision. Now imagine this, a world where you move with absolute clarity, where you no longer apologize for ambition, where every silence, every gesture, every choice carries weight. That's the world Machiavelli envisioned. A world where those who understand human nature rule those who merely hope for fairness. You don't need wealth to enter it. You only need awareness. Awareness sharpens your instincts, your timing, your perception of leverage. From nothing, you can construct inevitability. Every small act of discipline becomes architecture. Every observation becomes ammunition. Every rejection becomes data. You are not climbing a ladder built by others. You are designing a structure that bends to your movement. That is how invisible wealth begins, as a state of mind so stable that even chaos becomes predictable. And yet, here lies the paradox. The closer you get to understanding wealth, the less you'll talk about it. The rich rarely discuss money. They discuss control, over time, over systems, over narrative. They know that whoever defines the meaning of success collects the obedience of those chasing it. Your goal, then, is not to appear successful, but to redefine what success looks like from your throne. So where do you start? You start by observing your emotions around money, fear, guilt, envy. Each one is a doorway to control. The less reactive you become, the more power you hold. The world manipulates through emotional contagion. Those who remain calm write the laws of panic. Machiavelli called this prudence, the ability to foresee consequences before passion blinds judgment. When you reach that level of awareness, wealth begins to move toward you naturally, because others start aligning with your certainty. They sense stability in your detachment, authority in your silence. You become magnetic without effort, respected without demand. You become, in essence, what Machiavelli admired most, a man whose fortune obeys him because he has learned to obey reality. And that's where the real transformation begins. When you stop fighting the system and start designing within it. When you realize that from nothing, you possess the most valuable position of all, invisibility. No one sees you coming. No one expects your rise. And by the time they notice, it's already too late. In the next part, we'll expose the final illusion. Why most people never build wealth not because they lack money, but because they misunderstand power itself. You've already seen the surface of the game, Vaisar. How effort is used to keep you obedient, how morality is weaponized to keep you predictable. But there's something deeper, something more unsettling. The world doesn't merely take your money. It trains you to surrender your capacity to think strategically about it. Every structure that surrounds you, from education to employment to entertainment, exists to keep your awareness external. You are taught to consume, not calculate, to participate, not to design. The real economy isn't built on production, it's built on perception, and perception belongs to whoever controls emotion. Machiavelli understood that long before the first stock market or multinational corporation existed. He saw that power wasn't about who had the most soldiers, it was about who controlled the rhythm of fear and hope in others. Today, those armies have become digital, and those fears wear friendlier masks. The notification, the trend, the sale, the story, each a miniature manipulation designed to keep you moving in circles that generate profit for someone else. The poor spend money to feel something. The rich spend silence to understand why everyone else does. Here's the hidden law. The easiest person to exploit is the one who believes he's too smart to be manipulated. Intelligence without emotional discipline becomes vanity, and vanity is the most profitable weakness in history. You can't teach humility to the overconfident. You can only sell it back to them disguised as luxury. The most powerful people in the world don't fight the system. They build layers of invisibility around their influence until they can move entire economies with a whisper. You were trained to think that transparency is virtue, but transparency is a vulnerability. What can be fully seen can be fully controlled. Every empire has two versions, the visible and the invisible. The visible one, the brands, the logos, the headlines, is designed for the masses. It gives them a story, a narrative that satisfies their sense of belonging. But the invisible empire is where the rules are written. It's quiet. It has no slogans, no influencers, no hashtags. It doesn't compete for attention. It decides where attention goes. That's where true wealth lives, not in possession, but in orchestration. Machiavelli's insight was brutally elegant. Control the appearance of power, and you don't need to hold it physically. The moment people believe you are inevitable, they begin to act in ways that make you inevitable. This is the essence of financial alchemy, converting perception into position. When others think you're winning, they align their behavior to sustain your victory. That's why the rich cultivate mystique, not because they enjoy secrecy, but because ambiguity is leverage. It keeps others off balance while making you appear omniscient. To become rich like never before, you must first learn the psychology of survival, not physical but economic survival. You must learn when to reveal and when to retreat, when to speak and when to vanish. Every investor, every strategist, every self-made millionaire who truly understood Machiavelli knew that silence is more powerful than persuasion. Words reveal direction, silence conceals intention, and in a world obsessed with exposure, invisibility becomes divine. Let's be clear, luck exists, but it doesn't choose randomly. It gravitates toward those who build the architecture that luck can inhabit. Fortune, as Machiavelli wrote, is a woman who favors the bold, but not the blind. She rewards movement that looks spontaneous, but is rooted in preparation. That's why the rich don't wait for luck. They create the conditions for it to seem inevitable. They understand timing not as chance, but as choreography. There's a moment in every person's life when they realize that the system was never designed for their benefit. For some, that realization becomes bitterness. For others, it becomes power. If you can look at injustice without emotional collapse, if you can observe manipulation without self-pity, you become ungovernable. You stop reacting. You start designing. Machiavelli's greatest lesson was not to trust goodness as strategy, but to use goodness as camouflage. He never said cruelty was superior, only that mercy without strength is a performance destined for betrayal. You may think this is dark, cynical even, but cynicism is the armor of the disillusioned. Clarity, on the other hand, is liberation. Once you see how wealth truly functions, how attention is traded, how scarcity is staged, how morality is marketed, you can step outside the theater. You can start shaping the script instead of acting inside it. The people who rise from nothing aren't the ones who work hardest. They're the ones who stop mistaking effort for impact. Consider the concept of psychological capital, invisible currency that determines how others treat you. It's made of perception, reputation, confidence, and distance. The more emotionally stable you are, the rarer your presence becomes. The rarer your presence, the higher your perceived value. That's why those who rise from nothing do it quietly. They don't announce transformation, they embody inevitability. They become scarce, and scarcity, when perceived as self-assurance, becomes magnetism. The Machiavellian path to wealth demands you replace emotion with architecture. Each reaction must become data. Each setback, a map of human nature. When others panic, you pause. When others rush to prove, you withdraw. When others speak, you listen for what they're not saying. This is how you stop losing money, by understanding that every market, financial, emotional, social, rewards patience disguised as power. Money, at its core, is obedience in physical form. It moves where belief directs it. The person who can command belief commands money without touching it. That's why the rich rarely talk about saving. They talk about control, of narrative, of trust, of flow. To never lose money, you must first stop spending belief on systems that don't serve you. Each time you react to outrage, envy, or guilt, you're paying someone else's empire with your attention. Stop being their currency. Wealth begins in the mind long before it exists in the world. The poor chase visibility. The rich design invisibility. The poor argue about fairness. The rich study leverage. The poor complain about timing. The rich create cycles that favor them. These aren't moral distinctions. They're strategic ones. The difference between struggle and security is not opportunity, but awareness. The one who can predict emotion can predict economics. You may have started with nothing, but nothing is just a space where illusion dies. It's the blank page before the empire is written. Machiavelli would tell you, build your fortress in perception, not in stone. Let people underestimate you. Let them mock your silence, because silence is the sound of construction. Every insult is proof that you are becoming unreadable, and unreadable minds cannot be controlled. Remember this, poverty is loud because it needs validation. Wealth is quiet because it commands it. You don't need to prove progress. You need to become so stable that others measure themselves against your calm. The man who can stay composed in confusion becomes the compass for those lost in emotion. That is power. That is wealth. That is the Machiavellian ascent. But here's the hardest truth. To rise like this, you will outgrow your old self. You'll have to betray the identity built from approval. You'll have to reject the need to be understood. Every great transformation requires social exile before it earns recognition. That's why the rich are often misunderstood. They no longer operate by emotional consensus. They stopped explaining, and the world mistook their silence for arrogance. The higher you rise, the more solitary the view. Not because you're alone, but because few can breathe at that altitude. To protect wealth, you must protect your energy. To protect your energy, you must master your exposure. Visibility without control is financial suicide. Influence without detachment is psychological poverty. Every day, you must decide what to reveal, what to hide, and what to let others believe. So, how do you build unshakable wealth from nothing? You begin by mastering the one resource that costs nothing but changes everything: attention. Attention is the modern gold. It shapes value, dictates culture, and builds fortunes faster than oil or steel ever did. Control attention, and you control wealth's gravitational field. Every second you give away thoughtlessly is a coin handed to someone else's empire. Begin guarding it like oxygen. Machiavelli would say, fortune is not about deserving. It's about dominance over distraction. Those who command their focus command their fate. The powerful treat attention like a weapon, aimed precisely, never wasted. The poor scatter it across noise, mistaking busyness for productivity. But attention, when disciplined, becomes momentum. And momentum, once created, is nearly impossible to stop. In the final analysis, the difference between those who stay small and those who rise to insane wealth isn't intelligence. It's tolerance for ambiguity. The poor crave certainty, even if it's false. The rich thrive in uncertainty, because chaos reveals opportunity before order hides it. Every collapse in history has transferred wealth to those who remained calm enough to read its rhythm. The secret isn't avoiding risk. It's mastering emotional neutrality while risk blinds everyone else. You must understand, fortune doesn't care about morality. It rewards awareness. The river of wealth flows toward those who move with its current, not those who protest its direction. Machiavelli would never tell you to abandon ethics, only to stop confusing ethics with safety. You can remain good, but you must also become strategic. Compassion without control serves your enemies. Generosity without boundaries builds their kingdoms, not yours. The goal is not greed, it's sovereignty. Sovereignty means being untouchable by manipulation, immune to chaos, indifferent to noise. You stop begging for fairness and start crafting inevitability. You become the storm that others prepare for. You become the name whispered in rooms where decisions are made. You rise from nothing not because you worked harder, but because you saw clearer. And when you finally hold power, remember Machiavelli's final warning. Fortune is a force of motion. To keep it, you must keep moving. The moment you become comfortable, someone hungrier begins studying your pattern. Protecting wealth is not about hiding it. It's about remaining unpredictable. Let no one know your full capacity. Let no one sense your exhaustion. To appear effortless is the ultimate armor. Now you understand the architecture of power, the hidden geometry of wealth. It's not luck and it's not labor. It's clarity disguised as calm. It's psychology shaped into permanence. From nothing, you can build everything if you're willing to think where others react, to observe where others shout, to vanish where others demand attention. That is how you become rich like never before. Not by collecting coins, but by mastering the invisible machinery that prints them. And if you've understood this, you've already begun. You've crossed the threshold between hope and awareness. The system no longer owns your attention. The game no longer defines your worth. From now on, every decision, every silence, every calculated move adds to your unseen empire. This channel isn't for followers. It's for strategists. You've already begun your transformation. Don't stop now or subscribe and stay 2 moves ahead of those still playing by old rules. Comment below what part of you still obeys the illusion and which part is ready to rule it. The next video will not teach you how to earn more. It will teach you how to become untouchable.